Good to see everybody. Welcome in. Go ahead and get settled on in, and we'll get started here in about 2 minutes. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Sleuth Intuition channel. I'm your host, Patrick Vallejos, broadcasting to the world live from Phoenix, Arizona. And yep, the weather is getting a little bit better. I can see a slight change and I can see the movement in the sun. So, looking forward to that. Can't wait to get back out on the golf course. Good to see everybody. Welcome in Big Bird 420, Ziggy, Sparky, Zoe, Nixon, CJK, Right Field, Susie, Melissa Wildcard, Patty, Heather Marie, welcome in. Shane, what's up? James, what's up? Molly, good to see you. Caricature, Sparky, keeping you in the prayers. Jerry, Susie, Mustang, what's up? Silas, Cheeks, welcome in. Night Shadow, good to see everybody. Cindy, Red Queen, good to see you. Glad you can make it. Piper's Dream, hello, how are you? Hopefully I'm coming in loud and clear. All right. CJK, welcome in. Jason, good to see you. All right. Appreciate that input or your feedback. Thank you. Hello, Sherry Faye. All right. Who knows what the definition of malingering is? Character says, not I. Cindy, yes. All right. Well, what is it? What do you guys think it is? Oh, Molly raised her hand, so it's feigning illness for financial or other type of gain, malingering. Yep. You have to be doing it for a purpose. And it's not always faking, sometimes it's exaggerating. Pretty sure the word feign is in the definition somewhere. And it says prolonging or inventing long-term illness. I don't know if it has to be long-term. Is that Daniil? Am I saying that right? I want to say denial. Yep. Making stuff up. So we're going to kind of dive into that, and we're going to look at the difficulty they have of addressing mental illness, personality disorders within the correctional facilities, prisons, jails, you know, and how intuition, perception, and all of that plays into assessing whether or not somebody's actually really ill or they're just malingering. And then we're going to relate it to the Delphi case because Richard Allen has been accused of feigning or malingering symptoms of psychosis. Exactly, CJ. Faking mental health issues. Yeah, you hang in there. We're sending you those positive vibes. Sparky. Hey, welcome in, wife Lilith. Says when a person is exaggerating the symptoms of real mental health problems. Right. Yep. I think the two key words are exaggerating or feigning. Definition of feign is pretend to be affected by a feeling, state, or injury. Welcome in, wife Lilith, Phil Bond, Anna Lassette, and anybody else that I may have missed, I apologize. Either way, welcome on in. If you guys could go quickly share this video, hit the like button, and let's see if we can get some other people in here. Maybe some folks that actually know what they're talking about. Because I definitely am not a mental health professional, and this is all just a learning process. We're all deeply interested in the outcome of Abby and Libby's case. And anybody that can do what they did to Abby and Libby on February 13th, 2017, I think is capable really of anything. But also they may be actually ill at the same time. So we're going to play both sides of the field on this. And hopefully you guys can give me your honest opinions. Farmer, what up? Working hard or hardly working? Either way, I hope you're having a great day. Good to see you, Lilith. Red Queen says malingering is just faking mental health issues. Is it? Sounds pretty close to me. Isn't it also used for those faking or exaggerating any health related issues? Yeah, but I think they have to have a goal, you know, and I don't know anybody that would do that without a goal in mind, but I think that's part of the definition. So exaggerating or feigning illness, let's say to get out of work, playing hooky. You guys ever played hooky? I can't come in. I got the bug. And then you hang up the phone and you go right back to partying. Welcome in, Sherry Wilson. And it says medicine continues to improve with better imaging and tests. Doctors won't get away with dismissing suffering people as malingerers or hypochondriacs. Yeah, we're going to look at some pretty awful cases where some inmates were accused of malingering, and the only proof they had that they were not was their very own death. Um, we're also going to get into some pretty disturbing information about the Parkland shooter, so viewer discretion is advised. Molly says, yes, there needs to be a goal, whether financial, emotional support, attention, etc. Coughing in the phone call, off work, mental health day. Yeah, I mean, that's the best way to do it. You don't need to cough. You don't need to do anything. You just say, hey, I'm not coming in today. I'm taking a mental health day. You don't like it? Catch me outside. How about that? Because we all need it. You know, people treat us like slaves. Got to the point where we're proud, you know. I clock into my 9 to 5. I wake up 3 hours earlier than you do. You know, we need a break sometimes. A lot of hard workers out there. You know who I'm talking about. Okay, where should we start here? I have part of an article titled Evaluation of Malingering and Deception. It's pretty short. Maybe we'll start here. All right. The evaluation of malingering and other forms of deception is the cornerstone issue in forensic practice. This chapter provides both conceptual and clinical issues about the assessment of response styles. It carefully distinguishes explanatory models that address the underlying motivation for dissimulation from detection models that consider clinical methods for the identification of response styles. So that's what they're looking for. They'll put these inmates or patients through certain tests to see how they respond, and then that's how they judge whether or not they're malingering or not. In particular, malingering can be unduly influenced by our misassumptions and our perspectives towards its assessment. Regarding the latter, intuitional, standard, and specialized perspectives of malingering are explored. Clinical methods for the assessment of response styles are highly dependent on their validation, relative contributions of different research designs, simulation, known groups, differential prevalence, and bootstrapping are reviewed. Detection strategies are examined for dissimulation with mental disorders and feigned cognitive impairment. Specialized measures. I think this is a list of tests here: SRS, PDRT, and VIP are featured for malingering and mental disorders. That's number one. Number two, defensiveness and mental disorders, and malingering and cognitive impairment. So basically, they're telling us that they're having difficulty distinguishing between the two. I think it really depends on the person, right? There might be more sophisticated examples of maybe somebody with a high IQ, knowledge of certain illnesses. They can pretend better, kind of like the movie Silence of the Lambs, when he's like right at the end where he's escaping and he's showing all the signs of somebody under extreme trauma, somebody going into like a seizure, or they begin to shake, you know. So somebody like that might be more successful at it. They're trying to find ways to distinguish between the two. Good caricature. Anna says, I had a deadly heart rate for 37 years, diagnosed as mental illness, malingering, etc. I almost died in 2012 and finally got a medication that gave me a new life. Malingering diagnosis is dangerous. And I don't see any reason why your physician would think that you're malingering. Unless they suspected, like, I don't know if there's a certain type of medication. Fibromyalgia was ignored too long by insurance companies. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an issue here. And we're going to look at both sides of the fence, guys. So I don't want anybody to get too triggered. Thank you, wife Lilith. Says justice for Abby and Libby. I appreciate that. Yeah, I hope chemo's going well, Red Queen. You've been in my thoughts, so. Hey, T from Criminality. Another great channel. Make sure you guys go check her out. Good to see you. Sparky says, is it Richard Allen that's exaggerating his symptoms, or his attorneys exaggerating his illness? I don't know. I don't think it should be taken lightly. You know, it would take a certain type of person to smear feces all over yourself or drink toilet water. So you're either crazy or and you could always still be crazy and still be exaggerating. We went over that case where his defense was the insanity defense, and he was still feigning or exaggerating. He was malingering, but the judge still found that he was mentally ill at the time of the crime. So both things can be true at the same time. So it's possible that Richard Allen is mentally ill, but it doesn't matter what he is now. The question is, was he at the time of the crime? The only reason it would matter now is if the judge was going to say, hey, well, I find you incompetent. And that doesn't mean he gets to go to the loony bin. It just means that they go and they'll evaluate him, I think, for 3 weeks or 3 months or something like that until they clear him. There's been plenty of cases where people have flung shit at the judge or smeared feces on their face in the middle of court, stuff like that. Good to see you, Shane. Audra Kelsler, welcome in. Hopefully you guys are enjoying your Sunday. Okay, I think we'll start with this. We'll continue on with this article here titled A Formula for Prison Failure. Mix of mentally ill criminals. This is by Mark Ryan, a registered nurse who lives in Tallahassee. Doris, good to see you. Character is asking, what is your intuition on Richard Allen's behavior, assuming he's guilty, in a nutshell? Well, I always said in my profile of the bridge guy before Richard Allen was arrested, you can go back and watch it. I said somebody that was local, somebody with extreme mother issues, and we found out that he was pretty much abandoned by his father, and somebody who suffers from some kind of personality disorder mixed with mental health issues. So I think he could be actually mentally ill and more prone to psychosis under certain circumstances. So I think both can be true. I don't think they can prove whether or not he was out of his mind during the time of the murders, but I think it's possible. But I also believe that he could be feigning, he could be malingering, or even just flat out faking. He has plenty of time to kind of weigh his options. Like, how do I? All he wants to do is delay. That's it. He reminds me of Israel Keys in a way. Israel Keys had one child, it was a daughter, and that's all he would talk about. He didn't want her finding out any of the details. He said, I'll tell you guys everything that you want to know as long as my daughter never finds out. And during the course of him kind of confessing and telling folks where to find bodies and things like that, he learned that there were leaks from his interviews that were going into true crime. There were investigators who weren't exactly on the case, but were overhearing conversations and details and leaking that to the public. So he just stopped cooperating. He says, well, the deal is if you can keep my daughter from finding out what I've done, I'll tell you guys everything. He's like, I'm not into the whole true crime, nonsense and all of that, but I do want to reconcile. They couldn't guarantee him that, so he stopped cooperating. And you can go watch his interviews. They've been made public. They're on YouTube. We've shared them here on this channel a few times. But I feel that's the same thing with Richard Allen. If he's a sociopath or a psychopath, he only cares about himself and the things that are important to him. So maybe one of the things that's important to him is his wife, his daughter, his mother's perception of him. Him doing this disgusting thing to Abby and Libby and what he did, this unthinkable act, it might be a lot worse than what we know. You guys all know my opinion that he was doing something with the clothing. He was washing it for whatever reason. That detail is something that he does not want his wife, because already it's completely destroyed their perception of him as a father, as a husband, and as a son, right? Like what an embarrassment that would be. Your grandkids, they're gonna take that shit personal when you have, what's going on? What? Tell me about my grandparents. Where's my grandfather? Well, he's in prison for brutally murdering two young girls not much older than you. That's hard to live with. They start questioning themselves. Am I a killer? Am I going to turn out to be awful? It's like a curse now. But as long as he holds off from admitting that he's the bridge guy, that's not real yet. They still have plausible deniability. That's crazy. Faking that Irish accent. I have a cousin, he's like full-blooded Mexican. And he used to always say he was Irish. Like, what the fuck? What's up, Sam Cooley? Welcome in. Yikes. That sounds rough, CJK. Right, let's see who's just joining us. Kara, welcome in. Blind Squirrel. Blind Squirrel says, when does criminally insane come into play? Well, it's basically when you have no recollection of what you've done. You've actually blacked out. Like you don't know what you did. You woke up and there's a dead person in front of you and there's blood everywhere. And you're not just lying. Like you can prove that. Like in this case that I was referring to, the gentleman, he suffered from mental health issues and somebody came to check on his kids and they wouldn't stop knocking on the door. So he went into like a some kind of like a fit of rage and he killed the DCS worker who was there to check on the kids. He stabbed her like a whole bunch of times. It was horrible. She was very well liked in the community and people are still mourning her loss. Well, when he woke up and seen what he had done, he didn't try to cover it up. He didn't do anything. He called the police and then took himself to a mental health facility because he didn't want to stay with his kids. And he said, "Hey, I think I just killed somebody. Something's wrong with me. I must have blacked out." Well, throughout the trial process, he was still malingering, trying to exaggerate. But that didn't take away the fact that they were able to, the judge ruled that he was clinically mentally ill or insane. That also happened with another case that we covered. This young lady was on a date with another young man. She smoked marijuana for the first time, and it was a marijuana-induced psychosis. And she totally blacked out too. And for whatever reason, out of nowhere, she just stabbed this man to death, and she was let off. Piper says mental illness is hard to diagnose, especially if trying for disability. Before retiring, I did insurance. I know one person who told me there was no one who could tell if he was, quote, crazy or not. Imagine how frustrating that must be if you actually are. You're just trying to get the help that you need. And sometimes medication can fix it. In some cases, there's certain medications that can answer all of your problems. So it's tough. It's definitely not going to be an easy topic today. What's up, Stephanie? Welcome in. Cindy Lean, good to see you. Cindy says, my nephew, he is still non-responsive on a ventilator and has double pneumonia and having convulsions. There is brain activity, so that's a blessing. So you guys keep your thoughts with Sparky and her family if you could. Amanda says, Dr. Wallace suggested dependent personality. Some have said Chris Watts has the same. That could make sense of if guilt is proven. Yeah, and that sounds a lot like psychopathy, right? You kind of have that parasitic lifestyle where you can't really do anything on your own. And the sad part about that is a lot of people who are psychotic, they enjoy prison life. Oh, I don't have to go to work. I don't have to worry about paying my bills or, how I'm going to get here and there. It's all taken care of for me. It just sucks that they ended up in a place they were headed their entire life at the behest of a victim. It's crazy. Hey, Beth, good to see you. Thanks for dropping a comment. If you can't stay, it's always good to see you. Rain Dancer, welcome in. Yeah, there's a reason that we're not going through a speedy trial, right? If Richard Allen truly believed he was innocent, this trial would have been over with. Remember the whole catch him on the back foot approach. An innocent man, he wants to go to trial. He doesn't want to allow anybody to dig anything up, you know? So what you found my bullet? Doesn't mean I'm a killer. Prove it. But the reason that he killed Abby and Libby, in my opinion, is to keep his wife, mother, and daughter from knowing what he did that day. Why he did it? Most likely he couldn't control himself. Why couldn't he control himself? Because he's probably suffering from some kind of a personality disorder mixed with some kind of mental health issues. Maybe he was on drugs, really drunk or something. And then when he was done, he said, I got to do something to cover this up. And that's why he spent an hour and 30 minutes moving and staging the crime scene. He was trying to mislead investigators, hide what he did. Am I Italian? No. I'm a mutt. I'm Native American, Hispanic, German, and Swedish. German, a little bit of German, Swedish, and Norwegian. Welcome in, Badass American. Scott Peterson and his family and sister still stand by him. I believe his mother passed away. Yeah, Netflix just put out a really good documentary on that. I highly recommend you guys go watch it. I think that's a good example of a psychopath. A high functioning. Yeah. Anna says, my friend who was a prosecutor said to use criminally insane, the perp needs to be at the crime scene unaware of what happened. Also, another way to put it is the suspect has to be able to help in his own defense. He has to say, well, this is what I was doing. This is what I was really doing. But if he tells his defense, like, look, man, I don't know. I blacked out. Like something's wrong with me. He has no way to help. He's providing nothing to his own defense. Pretty hard to defend somebody that doesn't remember doing it. Question is he malingering? Good to see you, Badass. All right. This just in. We have a scrub report from Beth Gonzalez, 99 in chat and only 36 likes. Come on, guys. Don't be a scrub. Well, it depends, Stephanie. Mental illness, mentally psychotic, or better yet, mentally insane at the time of the crime. It does happen. But people who are suffering from psychopathy or other personality disorders, they know the difference between right and wrong. Welcome in, Hiawatha. Appreciate that. Hope you're having a great Sunday. Lola says malingering is kind of like having an upset stomach and then putting your finger down your throat till you throw up, and then telling people you threw up because your stomach's upset. The only lie is why. Yeah, it's like an exaggeration. Went from a mild tummy ache to possibly like the flu, you know? Honestly, badass, money always helps you when it comes to some type of legal situation. It's just the way it is. Blind says, I suffered TBA. What's TBA? That caused me to stroke out. I tell people I can hide my own Easter eggs. John Hinckley was criminally insane and when he shot Reagan, supposedly. What's up, Charlotte? Leslie, good to see you. Caricature sleuth. Was it random? He planned it by his pockets were full of weapons. But you think they are specifically picked, Abby and Libby? Well, see, you're throwing that out there. The whole pockets full of weapons. We don't know that. I'm starting to think that Richard Allen may have been. The more cases that I cover where people are psychotic or they suffer from psychopathy, usually they're kind of like on a crime spree. They're out doing shit that they shouldn't be doing. So maybe he was out all night the night before. That's why he's dressed the way he is. And he just had his gun and his knife or a blade on him for whatever reason. And then once he continued this crazy behavior or whatever it was, maybe he was enraged, angry, drinking, driving around, maybe meeting up with friends, doing drugs, or for all we know, he never even made it home from the night before. And then he decided, well, I'm going to go hurt somebody. He could have been just driving by the bridge for all we know. Maybe he was driving by the trails and saw people, young girls walking on the trail. He's like, I'm going to go hurt somebody today. I'll back in over here at the CPS building, grab my blade here. I got my gun. I'll wrap this T-shirt or whatever, this scarf around my face, and I'm going to go do some damage. We know he walked by those girls and they thought, he was having a bad day. They said hi and he just kind of gave them like a dirty look. I think that's possible too. Badass. Maybe they pulled down his face covering. They promised like, hey, we won't tell anybody. We promise we won't say anything. Shane says, yeah, the hour and 30 minutes is interesting, but we never talk about the two and a half hours after what is that? 2 to 3 after the murders where he disposed of the knife and maybe clothes, etc. Yeah, who knows? Where did he go? Like, this dude doesn't have an alibi at all. Where did he go? Who did he talk to? That's kind of where my mind goes when I think about why he would call the tip line. I feel like he had assistance with that, or he had a chance to kind of calm down and think about it. Okay, like, get your shit together. Okay, when I got there, okay, I saw those 3 girls and they definitely saw me. If I don't come forward, then they're gonna come looking for me. And if I don't come forward, my wife is gonna ask me, "Hey, I knew you were at the trails that day. Why didn't you come forward? Like, why aren't you telling, law enforcement that you were there that day?" So he would have to explain that too. So that's probably his I'm finding that that might be his motivation, his wife, like, I don't want her to find out. So I have to come forward because if they come looking for me, everybody's going to know that I didn't come forward and I'm going to look very suspicious. And that might even be enough for a search warrant. Yeah. So where was he? That's a good question, Shane. Where was he during the crime? What's his alibi? And what was he doing after? You don't hear his defense team talking about that at all. And that's what Mata said. That's what Bob Mata was telling us, that he feels that they spent too much time on the third party suspects. Maybe they dropped the ball. Judge Gall tried to give him an out. I'm like, hey, these motherfuckers are incompetent. Unfortunately for Richard Allen, Supreme Court disagreed. So now he's stuck with them. Sparky says, I don't believe Richard Allen was insane at the time of the murders. He knew what he was doing, and I think that it was planned, and he knew exactly how to hide for years. Yeah, it could have been planned. This could have been a pre-planned crime. But I think he's more. I think he adapts to his situations. He's like, okay, what do I do now? All right, so I did this, this, and that. If I do this, I'll be able to cover my tracks. So I feel like in any situation, he can evolve and adapt. And that's what he's doing now. Okay, I'm arrested. Okay, now I'm going to evolve and I'm going to adapt, as the situation unravels. And a lot of that's why I think he's this proactive person. He's learned to be proactive to hide who he really is. I call those countermeasures. All right. Formula for prison failure, mix of mentally ill criminals work. This is by Mark Ryan, a registered nurse from Tallahassee. Any corrections officer who has worked on a prison confinement wing will tell you the number of times he or she has heard the following statement: the voices are telling me to kill myself. Inmates play mental health games to get out of confinement. The chest pain game is another favorite. Doc, I'm having bad chest pains. The majority of those declaring a psychiatric emergency in correctional institutions have no intention of hurting themselves. On a recent morning in Florida State Prison in Rayford, there were 25 inmates on suicide watch. The 4 designated cells in the medical clinic were full, and an additional 21 inmates, all in single cells, were being evaluated in an overflow mental health area on a closed management wing. Many of the inmates had been transferred to FSP from other institutions. So I guess FSP is Florida State Penitentiary. The utilization of the CM wing for potentially self-injurious inmates is a way to assure a timely psychiatric evaluation while also keeping things safe. CM classified inmates are considered the state's most dangerous. Their statements and gestures are usually made for secondary gain. They want out of confinement. The goal is to be transferred to a medical or mental health clinic where there are opposite sex staff members. It would be impossible for the general public to understand the culture without working in it. A malingering CM inmate will feign depression by dangling a sheet or self-inflicting a laceration, or play crazy by smearing feces. At Florida State Prison, the 25 inmates will be treated professionally. They will be evaluated by a psychiatrist and or psychologist. I'm going to pause there for a second. So maybe it's that simple. Richard Allen wanted to get out of solitary. So if he smears feces all over himself, he gets to go hang out with the doctors. And now that he's comfortable, he starts confessing and things like that. They'll be seen by nurses and psychology specialists. Nurses and correction officers will do cell side safety checks every 15 minutes. If needed, there will be prescribed medications. If the psychiatric emergency is legitimate and more treatment is necessary, placement can be arranged for a crisis stabilization unit bed. Unfortunately, these beds are often occupied by the game players. In recent articles, the Miami Herald has documented incidents in which mentally ill inmates have suffered horrific abuse in state correctional institutions. The Herald stories are on target and enlightening. There's no excuse for the abuse. The perpetrator should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, but should we be so surprised by the incidents? The Florida Department of Corrections approach is not of the kinder, gentler variety. For instance, when a cell bound inmate, psychotic or not psychotic, refuses to cooperate with being handcuffed, the cell extraction team, not the treatment team, gets the call. At Florida State Prison, the combined weight of the first two officers charging the cell with the shield is about 750 pounds. Chemical agents are another fairly common intervention used when dealing with insubordinate inmates. Not many correction officers or corrections nurses are working on PhDs in psychology. Dr. Phil is not writing FDC policies. Mixing the mentally ill in with the malingering criminals is a formula for failure. Rick Scott should eliminate some of the six-figure salaries in the governor's office and put the money toward funding a community mental health system that is broken, that keeps sending, or shouldn't be, or should be, to a community mental health system that is broken, that keeps sending our mentally ill to the wrong place. Yeah, that's true. Nonetheless, Gypsy Rose Blanchard and her mom perpetrated malingering for charity, money, free stuff, free house, etc. Some illnesses present, but very much exaggerated and prolonged. Isn't that more of a case of Munchausen? Thank you, Leslie. James says, isn't it reported that Richard Allen had prior mental issues, though? Not according to the medication that he's been on throughout his life, but I know in the recent documents they talk about depression and I think there's something else, maybe bipolar. But I figure you'd be on medication for that. And that information was leaked. That the only time he was ever on any type of medication to treat that was while he was incarcerated. Let's go to Cindy. For all we know, he told Kathy he was forced into it or he had a mental breakdown, maybe even blamed her for it. I don't think he had a mental breakdown. If he did, I think defense would have used it. Yeah, that ship has long sailed. I think simply for the fact that he met with Doolin the following day and seemed like a normal person. And you think he would have admitted to it like, hey, I think I might be the bridge guy. You would still have that regret or regrets. Yeah, I don't know if it was the same bar. She may have worked at a couple of different bars. Hey, what's up, Chopper? Can't stop thinking he was on hands and knees looking for the bullet he dropped. Panicking, probably could hear DG shouting their names. I think so too. And he might have been looking for that bullet. I don't think he was too concerned about what was going on the trails. I'm sure he was concerned about it, but knowing that they couldn't see him and him panicking, knowing that if he doesn't clean up the DNA and possibly try to recover that bullet, then I think the only reason that he got up and got out of there was because of Brad Weber. He came home at 3:45, and Muddy and Bloody Guy was seen just a few minutes later. 10 minutes later, he was up there, and it takes 5 minutes to get out of. It only takes 5 minutes to get from the crime scene to the cemetery. We've seen 2 separate people do videos on that. It doesn't take long at all. So 5 minutes to cover the girls with sticks, and then another 5 minutes to walk out of there. And then boom, you're seen right out there on 300. And he most likely went possibly back onto the trail or behind the Mears property. All right, let's look at the case of Aaron Richardson Jr. This is a little bit hard to watch, but I think it's important.
I was straight down. So now I thought I wanted the sun. And then the sun opened.
Let me start this over for you guys.
I was straight down. So now I thought I wanted the sun. And then the sun opened up a circle. The sun opened up a circle like an eyeball. So there's you're not scared.
You feel all hope is gone, and you say no one knows what I'm going through. Jesus, he knows everything, and he cares for you. So hold your head up high, walk on through the rain, because you're gonna make it. You're gonna make it if you just hold on, because Jesus is here. He was dumped back to us once they allowed him to go blind and deaf and in a deteriorating state. Now he's given back to us. That's wrong. You can't even put it into words. I wonder, how did a healthy young man end up blind and deaf? And that is basically what I'm trying to get to the bottom of and find out what happened.
Have you asked to speak to an attorney?
No.
You want to talk to me?
What do we got to talk about?
Well,
we driving yesterday. What kind of car was I driving yesterday? You tell me.
no, you tell me.
You tell me.
No, you tell me.
No, you tell me. Because you telling me
What
in
you
my
talking about
head
running
that
it?
it was a Benz.
It was a Benz?
That's what you telling me in my head.
Well,
And you talking straight into my spirit. And I appreciate if you stop doing that.
all right, I'll try to not talk to your spirit, and I'll just ask you directly. What kind of
Man,
car
y'all
was you
gotta
driving?
be out of
It
this,
wasn't a
man.
Benz.
Man,
Jail, in and of itself, is a place where
Truffles.
people get sick. And sick people get even sicker and sometimes die. The one thing that I have come to know pretty clearly after 40 years of doing it, if you have somebody that you care about that's mentally ill or physically ill, the last place you want them to be, and one of the most dangerous places they can possibly be, is in the county jail.
Listen, your crazy act doesn't work.
My crazy act isn't working.
Nah.
I'm not crazy.
All right. Well, that's good to know. You're just an asshole then. Because you're either crazy or an asshole. Yeah. All right. If you think about where that BMW is, you knock on the wall 3 times.
Man, listen.
And I'll be back.
Man, we still got to get it. No, we got a choice to do right and to do wrong. We got a choice to do right now and to do wrong. You don't have to do right.
God bless me with my son. I love my son. He's a good kid. You know, he's made mistakes. He's had charges, yes, but there's a lot of good in my son. That's how he was raised. There's a lot of good in him.
Ah, man.
Let me go to this comment real quick. Anna says, if it is true that A said something like, is that creepy guy still following me? I'd guess that the girls had an experience with BG before they crossed the bridge, in my opinion. That's interesting. I never thought that possibly at another time or on another day that maybe they ran into him before, or every time they post about it, maybe he's been stalking them. You know, maybe this isn't the first time that they've coincidentally been on the trails together. That's interesting.
Hey, watch this. Who I told you I was?
When I met him, he could hear. He could see. He had mental health issues, but he could hear and he could see. He comes back from the state hospital. He can't hear. He's deaf. Now he's in the jail. So we got somebody who I meet them. He has normal faculties. 2 years later, he's Helen Keller.
What I have to do and what I've been trying to do is go through all of the medical records and see when he started going blind and when he started going deaf, whether or not they even tried to get him out to outside help or to a hospital when he started losing his hearing and his sight.
From 2011 to 2015, I mean, it's 4 years. He had symptoms. It's like a car crash afterwards. You can see the 2 cars, but you don't know what happened to them. At some point, we would hope someone would have put 1 + 1 together and say, okay, this guy's got something going on with 2 of his cranial nerves coming from his brain. The chances of that being unrelated and not one disease are pretty slim. But I think that given some steroids at the beginning, we might have been able to prevent progression. Yeah, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, may I speak to Betty Johnson, please? I'm going to be asking a lot of questions. Hey, Miss Betty Johnson, my name is Aaron Richardson. I have a couple of questions for you. Well, I would like to know, why did you sign a letter? My son is blind and deaf, and I feel like you're part of the blame why he's blind and deaf. I'm looking at something, the letter you wrote said that my son was possibly malingering, exaggerating his mental illness. He wasn't exaggerating it. He's right now, he's blind and deaf. And I'm looking at a letter you wrote here. You'll be hearing from me, because this is not right, man.
Very clearly, there was never any evidence, in my opinion, that Aaron was malingering. I think, given the outcome, any assertion of that's insulting. I never saw it, right, over the course of 2 or 3 years. And while I understand the hospital believed that opinion would diminish administration of treatment for his major mental illness.
And you wrote in this letter that he's exaggerating his state of his mental health or illness. I'm just seeing this in these records. That's all right. I'm not gonna give you his name. I'm gonna let her ponder that all night long, what she did. Well, there's been multiple, probably hundreds of lawsuits against this particular medical provider for the Broward County Jail, which is called Armor.
Private jail healthcare provider, Armor Correctional Health Services, which has a contract worth about $28 million a year, failed to properly...
A Sun Sentinel investigation of inmate deaths found that Armor has left severely
Thanks,
mentally
Olivia.
ill inmates unmedicated and malnourished.
Investigates found incidents of inmate deaths blamed on poor health care by Armor Correctional across
No
the
matter
country.
how many stories you guys tell about mentally ill people not getting treatment, it is the tip of the iceberg. Part of that is because how they're funded. In most cases, as in Broward, you have a county commission and a sheriff's office that privatize the medical and mental health treatment. Well, whatever amount of money that this private provider gets, every dollar of treatment that they render to a client or to an inmate is one less dollar of profit. The push-pull is you don't want them to die on your watch, but you also don't want to spend any money to keep them alive.
And one of the reasons why I'm able to take care of my son the way I do and watch after him is because I have my own business. If it wasn't for that, it would be even more difficult. Right now, I'm a single man, and the only thing that I care to do, what's most important to me more than anything, is my son. I try to do things with Junior to keep his spirit up, because a lot of times I can see his spirit just dropping. So what I try to do is keep the faith, take him to the YMCA 2 or 3 times a week, let him enjoy the water, just things that'll keep his spirit up. I pray. I want to know from God why. I want to know from God how.
In experiments and studies, when we take people's vision and hearing away by, blocking them and putting headphones on, if we do that long enough, in just a few hours, 24 hours, they will start to hallucinate. Their brain will fill any gap with information that's not really there. Now you have that happening to him in a guy who's schizophrenic who can't interpret reality normally anyways. That's just, I don't know how his dad's dealing with it. I mean, that's worse than schizophrenia. That's schizophrenia and your brain is playing extra mind tricks on you.
I hate my son had to get caught up in a time such as now, because he ended up blind and deaf, but he could have easily been dead. Thank God he's not dead. I'm speechless to think that, man, we are that wicked within. It's a representation of what America is. If we can put a man on the moon, if we can make cell phones, we can do all these things. Small things as taking care of people, we can do it. It's just that there's a lack of morality. There's just a lack of love. And that's the bottom line. It doesn't matter what your faith is or whether you believe in God or not. When men stop caring, this is what happens. When people don't care. Bottom line.
Right, let's catch up on the chat. Welcome in Big Fish, Small Pond. Indy Cindy, welcome in. Welcome in Miranda. Yeah, I would agree with that, Stephanie. That proactive approach he took. And if he was, for whatever reason, insane at the moment, he would still have regret, knowing what he did, being covered in blood and things like that. Yeah, I have a lot of my old phones too, James. I have at least 3. They're somewhere in the garage in a box. Forgot about that show. Let's go to CJK. I'm sure diagnosing mental illness isn't easy, and I've heard where people are misdiagnosed and people can fake it, symptoms which may or may not be known to the treating doctor. Yeah, we're going to get into that right now. Mindy says, does everyone still think he acted alone? I'm not sure. I do. Seems like there were too many things for one person. I think he could have easily acted alone. That creek isn't very deep, and there's a pretty much a sandbar right there where they would have crossed. So the deepest part only would have gone up to their knees, or maybe just below their waist. And he most likely forced them through the water. Like, hey, let's go right through here where the sandbar is. And remember, these perpetrators, they promise things like, I promise if you just do what I say, I'm not going to hurt your friend, or I'm not going to hurt you guys. I'm going to do what I came here to do, and I'm going to let you go. I promise. Just listen to what I tell you, and if you do everything I say, you guys will, I won't hurt you. But what you guys need to remember is that is 100% a lie every time. There's only one reason somebody's kidnapping you and holding a gun or a knife to your throat. It's because they want to hurt you and they plan to hurt you. It's fight or flight right then and there. There's none of this, okay, I'm trusting you. You know, I trust that you're not going to hurt me. Yeah, you can't do that. Can't take that risk. Yeah, 100% caricature. He was there, and he could probably hear echoes, running through that little canyon there of him asking, yelling for Libby. Not only that, you had Cheyenne, or not Cheyenne. What the hell was her name? Oh, yeah, Cheyenne. And the Subaru crew. And that's why they're not allowing the geofencing, because they know who those phones belong to. The geofencing is of Cheyenne and the Subaru crew. So all those phones that were kind of pinging out there, it belongs to them. And the reason they're not allowing it is because it doesn't pertain to their case. The judge isn't saying, "Oh, well, I'm not going to allow this because it helps the prosecution." No, they know who that belongs to. And what the defense is trying to do is trying to implicate them, or trying to point their finger at them as another third-party suspect. So that's why they threw out the geofencing, because they know who it belongs to, and they don't want people pointing fingers at them because it's distracting to the case. And their case is against Richard Allen. Yep. It's just a really messed up situation, Miranda. They need better, tests and ways to evaluate these things so they can kind of distinguish between the two. And they're working on it. We're going to see that now. Here next, we're going to look at an article by Colleen Jenkins. This is from way back in 2008. It's titled Courtroom Antics Don't Hold Off Sentence. A man gets life despite smearing feces on himself and smuggling a razor into court. Indy says, was he picked up on a road because of not being recorded on video? No, I think he went behind. Those businesses. So when he arrived, he was coming from east to west. He was kind of coming from Ron Logan's area, going towards the CPS building. So the Hoosier Harvest Store has a camera right there pointing towards 300. Captured him driving by. But once he completed creating that crime scene and the murder and all of that, he popped out on 300 again, most likely near the cemetery. That's when he was spotted there. So once he was seen or noticed that Derek German and Tara German were sitting in a car and that there were cars parked right there, I don't think he wanted to walk by there because he knew that Libby's father was looking for her. So he's in his mind, he's probably thinking, well, that's most likely them there. I can't go this way. And he definitely wouldn't go back on the trails, in my opinion, because that's still the same thing, right? So what I think happened is he went behind the Mears property after being seen by Sarah Carbaugh. And it's really not out of his way. It's the same distance. But instead of looping around on the 300, you're looping around behind that property. And I don't care if it's muddy, if there's a few fences or whatever. I still think he went in that direction. Bad as we seen, who was it? It was a channel name, the Big Lebowski, and also Randy Gravett. It took them 5 minutes to get out of that. From the crime scene, they walked straight up the hill and out the cemetery, and it took less than 5 minutes. It's not very far. If you go look at the RTV6 chopper footage, I mean, it's not far at all. So from the time Brad Weber comes driving down the private drive, because you can't really see from the bridge over to where they were. And that's probably why he took them there. He's been there how many times? He's probably been there before. But when you take that private drive, you can see down to the crime scene from the private drive. I agree, CJ. Yeah, I believe he came forward the next day, called the tip line. Then they called him back and said, hey, can I meet with you? And he probably said, yeah, well, I'm on my way to the grocery store. You want to meet there? Something like that. And then when Doolin sees little Ricky pop up, he's probably like playing, a Jedi mind trick on him or doing what he does, which is being a chameleon, right? Hiding right in front of you. Like you can't even see him. He's standing right in front of you. And at this point, they've probably already had information on Anthony Schatz, who Anthony Schatz was, the Maxwell connection. I know that they were extremely interested in Brad Weber and Ron Logan. So they already had their blinders on. And the fact that Richard Allen called the tip line and is coming forward, it's more effective that way. Being proactive makes you look less guilty. And we know that criminals like to inject themselves into the investigation so they can glean information and they can help control the narrative. So, I mean, this shit is kind of textbook. It doesn't mean it's not a sign that he's innocent. How many live streams do we have to do where I'm showing you guys examples of this behavior? Yeah, I thought that was a great song too, Molly. I think he's been a musician his whole life. His name is Aaron Richardson Sr. Yeah, I agree, Shane. All right, let me zip on down. Let's catch Robin B. Welcome in. Glad you're having a great Sunday. You're about halfway through. I'm more of a pack rat, Leslie, but I've gotten better over the years. But it's always hard when I'm cleaning and I'm throwing things away. Because us men, we always find things that we'll find a purpose for it later. Like the other day, I saved for whatever reason from a wine bottle. I had this cork, and it was just sitting in like this little junk jar. And sure enough, our bed sheet kept kind of sliding up. So I cut the cork into 4 pieces, and I cut some pieces of wire, and I used them to flip the mattress over, and I used those with the wire to kind of lock in the bed sheet. And I was so proud of myself because I knew at one point I was going to use it. So men do that shit. I don't know if you women suffer from that, but you have a certain piece of wood or piece of metal, and you just like, I'm going to need this. You kind of store it away for a rainy day. Anna says science needs to keep searching for psychological causes and cures for brain disorders, mental illness. The nervous system resists healing itself, in my opinion. And they are. They've come a long way with analyzing brains and things like that, especially when it comes to psychopathy specifically with the frontal lobe and all that. So, I mean, they're working. They could probably work a lot harder, maybe invest some more money and time into it for sure. They need something separate from jail or prison. They need some type of a mental facility where they can make those determinations with like a high probability, you know what I mean? Able to distinguish between feigning and actual illness. But I think they are working on it. I don't know if it's his vehicle, a vehicle that matches, the description of his Ford Focus. But it's probably is his vehicle, right? He said, hey, I was there. I haven't heard any alibi otherwise. Yeah, and the thing about being an inmate is you can't really expect to get the treatment that you need. And that's where the change needs to happen. You're a criminal at that point. You're not in a hospital, you're in a prison. And you have too many people who are malingering, which kind of muddies the water. Hey, welcome in, Lady Monet. Perhaps they run into him closer to the point where the girls were dropped off while Richard Allen was walking to his car. He could have followed them back to the bridge. Yeah, for all we know, he was stalking Betsy Blair. And while he was following Betsy Blair, here comes 2 girls. He knows that the trails are empty. He's just walked them. Betsy Blair's the only adult left. She's leaving. Here comes Abby and Libby. So at that point, he would realize that him and Abby and Libby are all alone. So he could be following from a distance. He could have been sitting on the bench when they walked by. But seeing Abby, from what I understand, she didn't walk that bridge. That may have been her first time. So Libby's already, she's way ahead. She's taking photographs ahead of Abby. We have the photograph where she's ahead, and then we have the video where she's ahead. So she's probably just, capturing her first time on the bridge. Like, you can do it. And I always wondered why. I always thought that they were lured there because They were motivated to cross the bridge, and I don't know why. Maybe just because, when you're young, you want to trying to show off, maybe. Maybe somebody told you were a chicken. Like, oh, you're afraid of the bridge? Oh, you chicken. Like, you can do it. Let's go today. You want to cross the bridge today? I don't know, man. It looks so scary. We'll take our time. Like, I'll be with you. All right, let's try it. And then while they're doing it, Abby's taking her time. She's very scared. She's not in any kind of rush. Libby's way ahead of her. And there's Mr. Creepy Guy watching through the trees, watching her struggle, thinking, man, how are they going to get away? If it's taking them that long to cross the bridge, if I assault them on the south end of the bridge, how are they going to run away? There's nowhere for them to go. And if what we read in the leaked Frank's memo about Richard Allen frequenting those trails, for all we know, he can sprint across that bridge. And he goes down the hill all the time. He knows what's down there. He knows where to take them, and if they run, where to block them off. So his confidence is building. It may not be a pre-planned, but he's kind of it's premeditated. He's this proactive, adapting, evolving type of guy in the moment. I think he does that in every circumstance. After the crime, after he hid all of the evidence, when addressing his family about being on the trails, after he got arrested, up until the current circumstances of the case, his current situation, he's just adapting and doing what's best for him. Miranda, his name was Aaron Richardson. So if you're trying to check out that song or any of his music, and his son's name is Aaron Richardson Jr. He was the guy that was basically accused of malingering and then went deaf and blind. The doctors say, they could have helped him with steroids and things to keep his brain from deteriorating. But yeah, I believe he's a musician. So if you want to check out that song, it was really good. All right, let me zip on down just so I can catch up, and then we'll read this article. And there's a few more videos that I want to show you guys. Yep, that's the prison system in a nutshell for you, Red Queen. If it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. What's up, Bogey? Let's try to stay on topic here, buddy. One thing I don't like is distraction in my chat. Zoe just hooked somebody up with the membership. Thank you for that, Zoe. No worries. We've been spending some time in the chat here. Trying to keep up, guys. Sorry. Hey, welcome in, Sarah. Yeah, Sherry Wilson, they said her first time to cross the bridge. That's what Anna said in an interview. We don't know everything about our kids, right? She didn't know she had a boyfriend or a Facebook. But from what I can see, that's probably true. That's what I think too, Sarah. It was like, I'll help you. I'll be there with you. We'll go slow. But while she's struggling, it's like like something's like a bug stuck in a spider web, and Richard Allen is the spider, and he can't help but be triggered by it, especially if he's been fantasizing about it, thinking about every time he's on that trail, like, man, it would just be easy to attack somebody on that side. And if he's having a rough day and he's pissed off, and the girl said something to him, like, ugh. Or they were filming him or whatever, who knows? Hey, Diamonds. Fibromyalgia, definitely not something I would wish on my worst enemy. I'm sorry to hear that. Because it comes and goes with good days and bad days, and definitely takes a toll on my mental health. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, big business. Okay, we're all caught up on the chat. I'm going to read this article. Then there's a few more videos I want to show you guys. This one's titled Courtroom Antics. Don't hold off a sentence. A man gets life despite smearing feces on himself and smuggling a razor in court. It's not that long. Faking a mental illness didn't get Robert Sinclair Lee very far. The man who brought feces to a courtroom in hopes of proving his incompetence to stand trial received a life sentence Thursday. Jurors found him guilty of multiple felony counts stemming from an attempted murder and robbery at a Temple Terrace restaurant in October of 2006. Afterward, they praised attorneys on both sides for their trial work, having no clue just how unpredictable things had been this week. This, prosecutor Chinwe Fawcett told jurors, was an unusual one. Lee, 27, was classified as a habitual felony offender. He managed to delay his trial for months after smuggling a razor into a courtroom and using it to cut his wrists on one occasion and smearing feces on his face on another. But doctors who examined him said he was malingering. Attorneys picked a jury Monday. On Tuesday, Lee complained he couldn't function because of medication taken at the jail. Hillsborough Circuit Judge Robert Foster delayed the proceedings for a day to have Lee re-examined. Again, a doctor found him competent. Wednesday morning, Lee refused to participate and created a ruckus as he kicked the door of his holding cell. Foster left the bench to inform Lee that the trial was about to start. When the judge returned, he said the inmate had disrobed. Bailiffs took Lee back to jail. He behaved calmly during the final day of trial. The bailiffs did an excellent job searching him to make sure he didn't bring anything into the courtroom, said prosecutor Derek Capaz. Jurors heard that Lee had held employees hostage inside the Panda Express at 8416 North 56th Street and demanded money. A delivery man thwarted the robbery, exchanging gunfire with Lee, who was wounded. Lee's attorney, Ronnie James, argued that Lee's gun accidentally discharged after he was shot. That's not where I heard it. Anna gave an interview. What was his name? The guy who interviewed Anna and Kelsey and Becky and all them. Renner, I think is his name. Well, he sat down in Anna's front yard, and that's when I first heard it. She said that no, Abby had never crossed the bridge. That's where I first heard it. Yep. Hey, Carrie, welcome in. Let's welcome in Carrie and Return to Diamonds. Good to see you guys. Yep, I agree with that too. All right, this next story here is titled BCA Completes Investigation of Jail Medical Neglect Death. Viewer discretion advised. This one's a little hard to watch.
In a years-long Care 11 investigation into Hardell Sherrill's death in the Beltrami County Jail.
Care 11 has learned a prosecutor is reviewing possible criminal charges. AJ Legault joins us with an update in our series, Cruel and Unusual. AJ?
Yeah, we are fast approaching the 4-year anniversary of Hardell Sherrill's death in the Beltrami County Jail after days of suffering, begging guards and medical staff for help that never came. We've now confirmed the State Bureau of Criminal Apprehension has concluded its criminal investigation and presented the facts of the case to the Beltrami County Attorney's Office to make a charging decision.
We're gonna get him, baby.
It's been more than 2 years
Mama's gonna get him.
since a grieving mom named Delphia Perry first took us to visit her son Hardell's grave
They refused to give him medical care.
and shared his story.
That's why he's here now. If they had treated him and given him the medical care that they should have, he wouldn't be here today. He wouldn't be here today.
Our investigation documented how the man, who never even got his day in court, died on a jail cell floor in excruciating pain, paralyzed, slowly suffocating over a period of days from a treatable disease that attacked his internal organs. Jail guards and medical staff thought he was faking. Because of that medical neglect, earlier this year, jail doctor Todd Leonard was stripped by the state of his license to practice medicine. An administrative law judge issued a blistering finding in the case.
The judge
Here's Hardell's mom again reading part of that finding.
even in his final hours, as he sat in a wheelchair in filthy scrubs with urine streaming down his legs. His caregivers would not believe him. As he laid unconscious, half naked on the floor of his jail cell, white foam coming from his mouth, they still did not believe him. It took his death to convince medical professionals and jail staff that the patient was not malingering.
Sweeping jail
Thank you, Carrie.
reform legislation was passed at the Capitol. It's named the Hardell Sherrill Act. But to date, no one has been held criminally responsible. And with the BCA investigation complete, prosecutors will now need to determine the answer to a very key question. Did what happened to Hardell rise to the level of criminal conduct? The Beltrami County Attorney, David Hansen, told me today it will likely take his office several weeks to first determine whether they have a conflict of interest and need to ask an outside prosecutor to step in.
Can you talk about the separate federal investigation and all this?
Yes, there is a separate federal investigation. The FBI has been interviewing witnesses now for a couple of years, and we've also learned that there's a federal grand jury that's been impaneled. They've issued subpoenas in the case, so we know that's also moving behind the scenes right now.
Well, and congrats to you, AJ, and the investigative team for bringing this to light. You made a lot of important changes, so
Absolutely.
we appreciate it.
I think Hardell.
In a years
All right. I was going to play this Parkland shooting one, but I don't think I'm going to. Let's go ahead and we'll finish with this. 92-year-old priest Lawrence Hecker malingering. This one's pretty disgusting.
92-year-old priest Lawrence Hecker was evaluated 2 weeks ago to see if he's mentally competent to stand trial on charges of aggravated rape, aggravated kidnapping, and more.
Yeah, we were supposed to hear Hecker's mental evaluation in court today, but that now has been pushed back to May 23rd. And WWL investigator David Hammer, he interviewed Hecker in August, and he's joining us in the studio to talk about how repeated delays are really affecting this case. David?
Yeah, Katie and Sharice, District Attorney Jason Williams did not mince words today. He accused Hecker of dragging out this process to avoid his rape trial. And he said our interview with Hecker just 8 months ago is proof that Hecker is competent to assist in his own defense. Retired priest Lawrence Hecker granted us an interview last August 22nd. He stood out in the sweltering heat for more than 18 minutes, answered all our questions, and admitted having sex with his students in the 1960s and 70s. He explained why, at the time, he thought it was okay for a priest to have sex with underage boys.
It was a sexual revolution, and people were saying, oh, look, we were bound all these years, all these centuries, now we're free. And I fell for that.
That interview was 8 months ago. 2 weeks after that, Hecker was arrested and charged with choking a boy unconscious in 1975 and raping him in a church office. His trial was set for January, but it keeps getting delayed. Hecker's attorneys asked for an evaluation of his mental competency.
You can't try someone that's not conscious. You can't try someone that can't assist their counsel with their defense.
Hecker was evaluated by forensic psychiatrists for about 30 minutes on April 4th. The court was supposed to hear testimony on their evaluation today, but the report wasn't actually delivered until this morning. And when do we expect
Ricky.
see that or have testimony on it?
I believe the date we selected was May 23rd.
The alleged victim's attorney decried yet another month-long delay.
I mean, he is incredibly frustrated. And, these are the issues that thwart individuals who have been victims of sexual assault, especially as children, from coming forward and then coming forward later in life.
And District Attorney Jason Williams says he, too, is frustrated.
The court should not view that as real. They should see it for the malingering that it is, and we should get a trial date. And we should be able to move forward with his prosecution so that he can spend the rest of his life in jail for the crimes he committed.
Now, we've posted our full 18-minute interview with Hecker on our website, WWLTV.com, so you can judge Hecker's mental acuity for yourself, at least as it was 8 months ago. Williams told us his prosecutors would bring every piece of evidence they have to the hearing May 23rd to try to prove Hecker is competent to stand trial. Katie?
Alrighty, because of time, we're going to go ahead and finish up with this last article. Now, this was put out September 6, 2024. Our last updated September 6, 2024. It's titled, Were Richard Allen's Confessions Out of Desperation or Deception? Delphi Attorneys Debate. Yeah, exactly, Shane. But the problem is you don't want the accused. Sometimes they're victims as well. They need to be proven that they committed the crime. So, we don't want to create another victim. And I'm definitely not saying that's what's happening here, but in some cases, that's what's going on. Ricky says, I'm actually really invested in your covering of the specific topic. I am a former corrections nurse, and I currently work in a psychiatric facility in New Orleans, and this really does hits close to home. Well, we're glad to have you. Look forward to your input. All right. Prosecutors and defense attorneys didn't dispute Wednesday that double homicide suspect Richard Allen confessed to the crime many times to many different people. But there was disagreement on the second day of a 3-day hearing that will set the stage for Allen's jury trial over whether the confessions were genuine or made out of desperation amid the conditions at the Westville Correctional Facility. Allen was being held at Westville before being moved to the Wabash Valley Correctional Facility ahead of the October trial. Wednesday's proceedings stretched late into the evening, with much discussion about the hole, a maximum security portion of the Westville where Allen was held in solitary confinement for more than a year. This was reportedly at the order of prison administration for safety reasons. Allen had little privacy in the hole, and he was under constant surveillance and rarely allowed to leave his cell. There was some debate Wednesday as to whether or not he had the ability to dim the lights. The unit was described as infested with bugs, mouse droppings, and extremely noisy, with neighboring inmates calling Allen a baby killer and yelling at him to take his own life. That would make any man go crazy. Allen's attorney, Brad Rosie, said. Allen's prison psychologist was called as a witness Wednesday afternoon and detailed the man's spiral into madness, which at some points included banging his head into the wall and eating his own feces. Dr. Monica Walla also recalled Allen's suicidal thoughts intensifying and that he said death would bring him relief. Prosecutors said Allen's shift towards bizarre behavior happened after a meeting with his lawyers. Dr. Monica Walla noted in past reports her concerns that Allen was faking his symptoms. Walla said prison staff ultimately resorted to involuntarily injecting him at least once a month with antipsychotic medication. It was around this time that Allen made confessions to family, inmates, and guards, as well as Walla and other medical staff. Rosie wants those confessions thrown out, blaming Allen's mental deterioration while in prison. So we know now that those confessions will definitely be included in the trial. John Gallipo, who was warden at the time, was called as a witness Wednesday morning and remembered hearing firsthand several of Allen's confessions. In quotations, "I killed those girls." Gallipo reportedly heard Allen say while standing outside of his cell. Allen was on suicide watch and relegated to isolation for much of the time at Westville, which prosecutors noted was well beyond the 30-day threshold set by the Indiana Department of Corrections for inmates with serious mental issues. Gallipo responded that some inmates like Allen can't be released in the general population for safety reasons, and that the suspect was treated the same as other inmates in solitary confinement. Special Judge Frank Gall took Wednesday's arguments under advisement and is expected to issue a ruling in the near future. The last day of the hearings begins Thursday morning. Prosecutors and defense attorneys are expected to argue, and we already know the outcome of all of that. All right, guys, we're going to spend the next 10 minutes talking about today's live stream. So if you have anything you would like to include in the discussion, let's hear it now. Thanks, Indy. I appreciate that. It's good to see you around and participating in the chat as well. Diamond says something triggered him. I don't think we will ever know the why. Sometimes there isn't a reason. It's a good question. This is for Ricky Robinson. Given your experience, do you look at Richard Allen and see a man who may be mentally ill or more than likely faking? That's a good question. Rain Dancer, Sleuth Intuition, maybe we can do a stream only on timeline. Yeah, we can do that. Cool but creepy. I've never been there. Red Queen, this discussion is so thought-provoking. Sleuth, thanks for putting this together for us. Yeah, I mean, these are the things, these are the questions that I have. And usually the live streams that I put on are in hopes that you guys might help me understand better. So I appreciate you guys as well. Sparky says, I worked at a psych unit for about 6 months. Some things that happened there gave me nightmares. I bet. I don't know. I think they would have to be folks who have proven good behavior, some kind of trustworthiness. Ricky says, I've seen some things, that's for sure. That's true. Welcome in. Is that Jarmy Vicious? I see a man that has been driven to madness. It happens. James, what's your opinion, Sleuth? Was Richard Allen blowing smoke? Well, the thing is he could be guilty and still be under psychosis. So I really don't know. I think he's going to do anything. I feel like the same thing that motivated him to kill Abby and Libby, if he's the killer, would also motivate him to, do this malingering and eating feces and acting like he's crazy, right? Anything to delay the inevitable. He killed those girls because he didn't want his family to find out. So he could be malingering for that, for the same motivating factors. He doesn't want his wife, mother, and daughter to find out any of the details, or to kind of fracture that fragile perception of him as a husband, son, or father. Because, that's going to change the course of everything for his entire family for generations to come. We will be covering a case, the Bear Brook murders. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. Maybe I can play a video of his surviving daughters. He killed most of his kids. And the story is of Terrence Rasmussen. And we'll get into this on Wednesday in further detail, but let me show you this video. She kind of talks about how her kids, are kind of suffering from her past and knowing that their grandfather is a serial killer. Let's take a look.
I want to stay sober. I want to not be anything like my father.
Andrea Stiers says she gave up alcohol and marijuana the day after police knocked on her door with news that she had a half-sister who was murdered by her father. She was 4 the last time she saw her biological father, Terry Rasmussen, but this case has unleashed new memories.
She was adorable. I didn't remember her, but I do now.
She has not been identified yet, but Stiers and her siblings call her Anita Moon. Stiers thinks the child was half Asian and has a theory on why Rasmussen killed her back then, but not Andrea.
I think he killed my sister because she didn't look like him. I really can't stand my face sometimes when I look in the mirror because I look like him, It's hard. Sorry. Sorry.
Stiers says her mother banned them from asking about her father after he disappeared.
Obviously, my dad was mentally ill and addicted to alcohol. There needs to be laws to protect children from their drug-addicted and mentally ill parents.
Stiers has 4 adult children, and she says they're embarrassed and upset by the news that Rasmussen, their grandfather, is the Bear Brook killer.
My kids, they're ashamed. They don't want anybody necessarily to know, but that's not their shame. They did not do it. Yeah, that's what I told them, that you didn't do it.
Now,
you see that? That's what I was referring to, you guys. The shame of it. It's almost like a family curse now. They have to hand that down to their children. Like my grandfather was a serial killer, or my father was the murderer. My grandfather was the murderer, the Delphi killer. It's messed up. It never ends. It's not just his wife finding out, his daughter finding out, his mother finding out. This is going to last with them for a long time, for a few generations. The shame of it. It's awful. The nuclear fallout. Not to mention, it's going to be 10 times worse for Abby and Libby's family. I mean, it breaks my heart every time you hear Anna and when she talks about no grandbabies. It's like we can barely grasp what they're going through. And for Richard Allen to be the guy who's responsible for that, he doesn't want to face that. He doesn't want to shatter the perception that his mother, his wife, and his daughter have of him. It changes everything. And not only for them, but for generations to come. It's fucked up. That's a lot for him to accept. And anybody that could kill those two young girls and do what he did, is definitely a weak man. So it's his weakness that won't allow him to face that truth. All right, guys. That's going to do it for today's live stream. I really appreciate all of you who were able to catch the live and participated in the chat. Thank you for doing so. I appreciate your input and your feedback. It means a lot. And if you are part of that replay crew, you guys know what to do. Drop a comment and I'll get back to you. Those of you who won the giveaway, whether it was the mods, subscribers, or members, those items have not been shipped out, but I have all your items or all of your orders, and I got everything listed and ready to go. And those will probably be sent out sometime before Wednesday. So you should be receiving those within 2 weeks. So congrats to you guys. And another special shout out to today's sponsors, Wife Lilith, Zoe Kitty, Carrie, and all of you who continue to donate to the Cash App. You guys make this possible. And you guys are buying the time for me to put these live streams together and for me to be here to do this. Couldn't do it without you guys. So I'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.